Hello and welcome to your short video on how to improve the flexibility and mobility of your hips. My name is Yasmin Say. I'm founder and owner of Say Fitness Personal Training. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos like this one. Okay, let's get started. So we're first going to start off with releasing the hip girdle a little bit. So we're going to do some pelvic tilt. So we're going to lie down on our back first of all. So slowly lower yourself down onto your back, bending your knees, feet are about hip width apart here. And we want to find a nice neutral position to start off with. So if you're not sure about how to find neutral, an easy and quick way to find it is by sliding one of your hands underneath your lower back, pressing your lower back into your hand and then removing it. That gives you a little pocket of air underneath your spine here, underneath your lower back. So then I want you to bring your fingertips to your front hip bones here. And we're going to do some pelvic tilt. So we're going to slightly tilt the pelvis forwards as we inhale through the nose. And as we exhale through the mouth, through pursed lips, I want you to connect your hip bones towards your rib cage as you come into imprint. Inhale as you tilt the pelvis forwards, and if it's easier for you to feel the movement, you can have your hands resting on the top of your pelvis here. And then as you exhale, draw hip bones towards the rib cage by using your abdominals here, your anterior abdominals. So just releasing the hips here and feeling the difference of that lengthening of the tailbone down towards your heels, and then slowly flexing into that lumbar spine as you come into imprint. Just do this a few more times, just getting into your breathing here. Inhaling and then exhaling, feeling that anterior tilt of the pelvis as it tilts forward into that posterior tilt. Last one here, inhaling. And then exhale, draw ribs down to hips, hips towards ribs. Release back to that neutral position. Arms down by your sides with your palms facing up so you open up into your shoulders. I'm going to take this into a Pilates hip roll here. So we're going to initiate with that pelvic tilt. So as you inhale, prepare, exhale, tilt the pelvis as you slowly roll up through your lower back, your mid back, your upper back, as you squeeze your hips up towards the ceiling. Now squeeze your glutes here. Stabilize the pelvis so it's nice and level, pressing down into both feet, sending both knees forward. Inhale here, and as you exhale, articulate through the spine, upper, mid, and lower, returning back to your neutral position. Inhale, prepare, and as you exhale, rolling up, using your abdominals here to connect hips to ribs. Squeezing the hips up, opening up those hip flexors here. Should feel really nice. And then as you exhale, rolling down. Nice spine massage at the same time. Taking an inhale here. And then exhale, slowly roll up, lower back, mid back, upper back. Squeeze the glutes here. Taking an inhale. And then as you exhale, rolling down, upper, mid, and lower. Excellent work. Just hug the knees in here, holding on to both knees with both hands, and start to draw some circles in opposite directions here. Just opening up the hips a little bit, getting some movement in there, and then change direction. Don't be too concerned about how big your circles are. This is just warming up the hips. So we move now into one leg circle. So this is going to improve the articulation of each hip joint on your left and on your right. So it's a Pilates exercise. You can do it in a number of different ways, okay, depending on your hip mobility. You're going to extend your right leg. So we're going to start with our left leg. Now, if you have tight hamstrings, I would recommend that you just bring this leg to tabletop, okay, so to 90 degrees. You want to remain in a neutral position as much as possible, so you've still got that pocket of air underneath your lower back. So if it's easier for you to remember, imagine you've placed a little blueberry underneath your lower back and you don't want to crush it. Arms can be out to the side so you can relax those shoulders. The movement pattern goes inhale as you rotate towards the midline, and then exhale as you rotate away. So inhale, circle towards the midline, exhale, circle away. So I'm rotating my femur through my acetabula, through the hip joint here. And I'm being very conservative about the size of my circle because I'm very conscious of not losing that neutral position. But equally, I want to keep the hips very still and very stable. When you've done 4 or 5 in one direction, simply go over to the other side. Again, keep connecting your core here, hips to ribs. Be mindful of the rib cage flaring. Nice steady circles. Last one here. And then you can release that leg down. I'll show you the alternative so you can, if you want to progress to the next level, you will do this with a straight leg, okay? Remember to point the toes, keep this leg active as well, neutral position here. If you have tight hamstrings, then do avoid this version. You're going to inhale, circle to the midline, exhale, circle away. Inhale, and then exhale. Inhale, exhale. So nice steady breathing. You can see the tempo I'm sticking to here. And then I go around in the opposite direction. And you may at this point already notice a difference between your left and right hand sides. Last 3. Last 2. And any clicking through your hips, very normal. Unless, of course, it is painful, okay? So if it is painful, just reduce your range of movement. Hug the knees in, rock from side to side, lengthening your tailbone down towards the mat. And then start to build some momentum as you rock yourself up and you're coming onto all fours. So moving from one leg circle, quite a basic, more beginner level of articulation through your hip joint, we move into something a little bit more progressed, into hip cars. Hip cars stand for controlled articular rotations. So we're now going a little bit deeper into that rotation through the hip joint. So what I want you to do is coming onto all fours here. Shoulders are stacked over your wrists, hips are stacked over your knees. You want to be in a nice neutral spine here. So crown of the head is reaching forward and your sitting bones are pointing back. You want to stay nice and strong through your arms here. And as a tip, what I like to use here is a Pilates block or a yoga block, or you can get a heavy book. And you're going to line it up against your right hand side to start off with. The reason being is that what you don't want to be doing as you do these circles through your hip is be leaning too much onto the opposite side, okay? So you keep everything fairly neutral, fairly centered. So I bring this up against my right leg, coming onto all fours. I keep my left leg at a right angle and I start to draw circles. Now, not only am I trying to avoid leaning onto the right hand side, but I'm also trying to avoid bending the arms. Yeah. So you can see how quickly I could knock that block over. So to keep everything quite tight to the midline, I'm going to be very aware about how big I make these circles. It's not to say that it's going to be like this all the time. Obviously, with practice, I can make that circle a little bit better as my hip mobility improves. So I've changed direction now. And if you wanted to ensure that you keep that leg at 90 degrees, you can use a small Pilates ball to squeeze behind your knee. Or you could use a yoga block as well. I'm going to do one more here and then bring it back in. You can already feel now things starting to loosen up into that left hip joint. So now I'm going to go over to the other side, but I'm going to bring the block onto this side so you can see if I'm going to lean too much onto the left-hand side here. So I'm bringing the block here, finding my nice quadruped position, and then I start to draw those circles all the way around. And at this point, I do start to feel a difference from one side to the other. And don't worry if your circles aren't as big as mine, or if you can't quite reach the range that I'm going to. Remember, comparison is the worst thing when it comes to these flexibility and mobility exercises, okay? So meet yourself where you're at and know that if you practice consistently, that you will see changes, you will see improvements as the weeks and months go by. Last two here. Steady breathing. Don't hold your breath when you're doing any of these mobility exercises. And then rest there. Now, one of my favorite hip mobility exercises, which always feature in my Pilates classes, is 90-90 hip rotations, okay? So 90-90 shape of the legs here. So you can see both of my legs, one in front, one behind here. And to start off with, again, I'm going to sort of progress the levels as we go through the variations of the exercises. But to start off with, I always recommend that you prop yourself up. So you keep your spine nice and long. You're able to use your core here, and your hands are just placed behind your hips. Now we start very slowly as we go through this movement. So you're going to start by lifting that back knee up towards the ceiling as far as it can go into that external rotation. Once it can't go any further, you're going to flip the other knee over to meet it. And repeat. So you're going to lift the back knee up, 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 up until it can't go anymore. So we're going slowly. We're just kind of testing the waters here to see how our hips feel. So when you bring those knees over to the other side, do you feel any pinching in the outer side of the hip or perhaps on the inner side, okay? That will give you an indication. Maybe you're tighter in your external rotation versus your internal rotation, okay? So internal rotation, external rotation. So just have a feel where that tightness is. Now, if you are able to do that pretty easily, you're not sort of kind of leaning backwards, then I'd suggest you can bring your arms out in front of you, or you squeeze your fists here, creating a bit of a radiation, which is, in other words, tension in the body. Keep your core engaged, really keep nice and upright, and do exactly the same thing. So from this point onwards, I'm going to just layer up the exercise now if you want to take it into any of the progressions that I offer. So one way is not only flipping them over, and you can see I'm already traveling down the mat here, so that's very normal. As you bring them over, you can add a little bit of rotation, yeah? But I'm very mindful of my lower back when I rotate here. So I squeeze that back glute as I rotate. So as I bring myself up and over to the other side, I'm doing that same thing. I rotate, but I'm squeezing that glute here to protect into my lower back, okay? So that would be your next level. And then if you want to take this into a hip extension, a bit of a hip flexor stretch, as you flip them over, you can push your hips open to the front here. So that's by squeezing my glutes. I lengthen through my hip flexors here as I push my hips forward. And then I bring it down, flip it over, and then I can do exactly the same thing. So you've taken that through 4 different levels there, just with your 90-90 hip rotations. The final variation, which is quite advanced, so again, if it's an absolute no-no, avoid it for now, but it's something that you might progress to in the future, is you're going to start moving using a little bit of articulation now through the hip joint. So you can bring your arms out in front if you wish, or you can prop them up. What you're going to do is bring that back leg up and forward, and then rotate it back and down to its original starting position. So again, if I want to bring my arms out in front, I can do that, but I'm making sure I keep upright. It wouldn't be practical if I was just leaning over to the other side to do that. So keep everything again very centered. Use your core, use your breathing here as you slowly bring that leg forward and then bringing it back. And then, of course, you would do exactly the same thing on the other side, bringing it forward and then bringing it back. And again, I'm noticing a difference. How easily, how fluidly am I able to do this on one side versus the other side? And there you have your 90-90 hip cars. Meeting me now in your deep squat. So this is going to help improve your squat mobility. So if you are regularly in the gym working on your back squats or your front squats or any other variation of a squat, then this is the drill for you. So firstly, it's important to say, don't worry if you can't sit comfortably in a deep squat. Everyone's meeting point or starting point in a squat is going to be different. Perhaps you are up here. You can still do the following drills that I'm about to show you. Now, keeping those heels down is important, although it's not necessity. So if, for example, you can get down to this level, but your heels are lifted or elevated, then perhaps it's more of an ankle mobility issue that you need to work on, okay? So as long as you're feeling relatively comfortable that you're able to sit down into whatever your deep squat is for a little while, then these are the drills, okay? So you're going to keep your elbows on the insides of your knees here and bring your hands together. And all I want you to do to start off with is at the same time as pushing those knees out with your elbows, you're going to simply shift from one side to the other. And actually, I would say you get a little bit more bang for your buck here because you are working on your ankle mobility at the same time, yeah? So you can see I'm shifting into my left, so I'm getting a bit more dorsiflexion into my ankles here, left and right. So moving side to side, pushing those knees out. Now from here, you can start to pulse those knees out a little bit more, yeah? So it's just spending a bit of time here. And again, the more consistent you are with these drills, the more your body, your nervous system is tuning into going, this is actually a safe position to be in. I've remembered this position. I feel okay. It is not as painful as it used to be. So again, meet yourself where you're at, but be consistent with your practice. Now we take these into a frog squat, and I'm sure a lot of you who've done my videos and my workouts before know the frog squat. This is a great way to open up the hips and really kind of hopefully help that lower back tension or any lower back pain that you might be struggling with. Elbows inside of the knees, that's where they stay, your hands stay together, and you're going to send those hips up and then bring them down. Sending them up, straightening the legs as much as you are able to, as long as you're able to keep those elbows inside of the knees. Up and then down. We'll do one more here and then down. Hopefully you started to feel that lactic acid burn in your muscles a little bit. And if it gets too tiring, guys, being in this squat for too long, then feel free to straighten the legs, shake them out a little bit, and then you can repeat those drills for another 2 rounds. The final hip mobility drill I have for you today is to help you improve your Cossack squat. If you don't know the Cossack squat, it's a lateral form of squatting from side to side. And again, as I have done with the previous exercises today, I'm going to help you layer the progressions on. So simply starting to see where you are at with your Cossack squat, I want you to bring your legs reasonably wide with your toes turned out. All I want you to do is simply bend into one knee as you sit your hips back like you would be doing a normal squat, transition back through center, and then over to the other side. So what I'm doing here is building up my single leg strength. So I send and shift the weight onto my right hand side, bring it back up, and you can see that I'm trying to position my knee in line or in between my first and second toes, and then come up. So if this is quite easy for you, then you progress to the next level where you're going a little bit deeper and then up. And again, we're just moving through a little bit more of our active range of movements, okay? We're able to control it, yet we're still going a little bit deeper on each side until you progress all the way down towards the ground. And you're lifting your toes up now. Here, I want to keep that knee pointing out, yeah? Just in that alignment that I just mentioned over your first and second toes here. This is where the first stage, I would bring my hands out in front. I want to ideally, just like I mentioned with the deep squat before, I want to keep my heel down. So as I transition over to the other side, I want to be able to, and you can probably hear that lovely click through my knee. I want to be able to transition nice and smoothly over to the other side, but I'm using my hands for support here, okay? So that would be the next level. You can go deep, yes, but you need a little bit of support from the hands to transition the weight up and over to the other side. Now, next stage, okay, so we're building up to the more sort of intermediate advanced level with your arms, okay? So releasing the support from the arms, bringing them out, squeezing your fists, engaging your core, transition up and over without losing your balance, yeah? So keep yourself upright as much as possible. This wouldn't be great, right? That means I need to still use my arms for support, bringing them up and over to the other side. Up and over to the other side. Last stage, if you want to go for it, and again, this is quite an advanced exercise, but it will take practice, is you sit back down onto your bottom, you draw your knee in, coming into a bit of internal rotation, you bring it up, you sit back up into that Cossack squat, and you transition over to the other side. You sit down smoothly with control, rotate knee inwards into internal rotation, coming up, push up, and then over. Okay, so just be mindful. Don't worry if you aren't at that level straight away. Work on the previous iterations of the exercise and you will get there slowly but surely. Okay, at the end of your whole hip mobility drill sequence, stretching. Okay, and again, if you might not feel that you want to do any stretching by this point, but at the same time you might want to just hold a stretch for your hips and your glutes for about a minute on each side. The best stretch, in my opinion, would be the pigeon stretch for this, okay? 2 ways of doing this, depending on how comfortable you are in that final stretching position. Coming into the standard pigeon stretch, you're going to extend the left leg up towards the ceiling from your downward dog. You're going to bring that left knee behind the left wrist and the ankle behind the right wrist. And you're trying to get your hips nice and square here. So I first of all check that my leg is straight behind me. And what I'm aiming to do is draw my right hip point forward and my left hip point back, yeah? I can then find where I can go, yeah? How deep I can go in this stretch. Is it here? I have to hold myself upright, or is it down on my forearms, or is it all the way down onto my chest here? But I'm still reminding myself right hip point forward and left hip point back. And you want to be holding this for about a minute or 2 minutes, ideally. Breathe. Don't resist the stretch. Try and relax into it. Try and breathe and go deeper into the stretch as much as you can. And you should feel predominantly the stretch in your outer left hip and into your glute here. If you can get someone to adjust you by making sure your hips are nice and level from behind and give you a gentle push down, that's also recommended. And just to show you the reverse, okay, so if that position is not accessible to you for whatever reason, you can lie down on your back, you can do the reverse. So here I bring my right foot over my left thigh, I thread my hands behind my left thigh here, and I'm pushing that knee out to the side. And you have 2 choices here. You can either, if you feel the stretch more as you bring the legs in towards your body, then that's great. Otherwise, you want to push the legs away from you. So in essence, I'm lengthening the tailbone down towards the mat. I personally find the stretch is deeper doing it that way rather than pulling the legs in and curving my spine. And again, 1 to 2 minutes, breathe through it and try and keep pushing that knee out to the side. Well, I hope your hips are feeling all loosey-goosey after that. And if you want to check out more of my mobility workouts, then maybe check out this one on how to improve your shoulder mobility. I'll see you in the next video.